Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, Jon Nelson and John Wilkerson.
This could be an epic college football X. Yes, we've got coaches fired again.
Fired.
With a twist.
You're fired.
Yes, with a twist. We're going to tell you where a good budget football game to attend this week. And there are a few out there that have some interesting matchups. We'll also talk about two classic West Coast rivalries that just are not at the right fit anymore. But we're going to begin, Jon Nelson, with the college football playoff poll that was released on Tuesday.
Yes.
And no shockers here. Your top four are Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State, followed by Indiana at 5, Notre Dame 6, 7 Alabama, 8 Miami, 9 Ole Miss, 10 Georgia, 11 Tennessee, and 12, cracking the top 12, is the Boise State Broncos, which, if you look at the bracket, if it was played this week, or let's say the season ended last Saturday and this came out,
right,
Boise State has a bye into the quarterfinals, simply because it would be one of the top 4 ranked conference champions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the bracket, it would be they would take on the 5-12 matchup. God, I can't believe we're doing college football or college basketball terms in this, which is BYU at the Horseshoe against Ohio State.
Yeah, but I don't think that's
the vision of Ohio State on the Smurf turf. Whew, on a 15 below day.
Oh boy.
In Boise.
Yeah.
I mean, Brother Marty would just be as nervous as you can be.
No doubt. Well, yeah. I mean, considering that one of the top 5 in the OSG Sports s'mores party and fireplace extravaganza, Ashton Genty, I mean, it makes absolute sense that because of the bye week and because of how things get twisted and things like that, that you would have a 5-12. See, but the thing is if we talk about it like we talk about the college basketball tournament, this 5-12 doesn't really scare me because it's at the Horseshoe. The 6-11 is the one that really should scare people because you have Georgia at Penn State in the 6-11.
Don't doubt it'd be a whiteout.
Woo! And to me, that's the one that I would be the most concerned about if I was a fan of Penn State. The fact that you would have drawn Georgia at 11 in the 6-11 game.
Well, think about this. Is the 6-11 game now the 15-2 equivalent in the college football playoff?
Yeah, and then the 8-9 matchup, I'm like, yeah. The 8-9 matchup to me is just kind of like, yeah. I mean, it literally
Alabama Notre Dame, it's
like every 8-9 that we see in late March and April. You're just kind of like, yeah, it's an 8-9. I could kind of see it going either way, you know. But the 6-11,
well, usually an 8-9 is like a top tier Horizon League team against a middle of the pack ACC team. And you have no clue if we're going to do men's basketball tournament equivalent here. But you got Alabama and Notre Dame, which with Notre Dame in there shuts out the Big 12, which I can't imagine how much holy hell will come out of Dallas if this is the case. But again, it's a great matchup if you're a purist.
Yeah, true. Then the winner of that one would get the 1 seed, the overall 1 seed being Oregon. So the winner of Alabama Notre Dame in South Bend travels to Autzen.
Alabama at Autzen. That'd be awesome.
Say that 10 times fast.
First of all, Alabama going to Notre Dame Stadium and then going to Autzen Stadium in Eugene.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't tell me that the get-in price those would not meet football on a budget price tags. They would not. But then you'd have Georgia, the winner of Georgia Penn State, going to Hard Rock to take on Miami. To be honest, I think an angry Georgia team at 11 right now can get past Penn State and could get past Miami to get into that semifinal against a team in theory that they've already beaten this year.
Yeah.
In the University of Texas, who is the overall number 2. You're 7-10, Ole Miss and Indiana. That one for me, Kurt Cignetti signed the deal. I would right now, I would sit here and say without any juice boxes or knowledge of anything, I would say that Indiana would get the Duke over Ole Miss, and then Indiana to DKR. Good luck trying to get a hotel room and a ticket if you're going from Bloomington to Austin. But then
have a rough drive.
In one semifinal, as I'm mapping this out in my brain, you'd have a game that you've already seen this year in that same location that is not going to meet football on a budget.
Well, we had that in 2008, 17, 18 with the SEC championship between Alabama and Georgia at Mercedes-Benz. And then a month later, we got the national championship game in Mercedes-Benz with the same 2 teams. I think different colored jerseys, though.
That's true.
And we got a couple of classic games out of that. So it's really nothing new in college football now to have rematches. You being a Florida State guy, you can probably remember Florida State played in the Sugar Bowl a month after playing their rivalry game that year. So again, it's not unique in college football, but it's still kind of odd for that to happen. But look, I look at that and I see Indiana wearing the Cinderella slipper, especially if they get by Ohio State this Saturday and run the table and win the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
I mean, the story alone puts Cinderella slipper on there.
True.
But the true Cinderella would be Boise State, and they would get to host the game potentially against Ohio State, which again, worth every dollar to watch the Ohio State at the Smurf Turf.
The price of admission for the Idaho Potato Bowl versus this particular quarterfinal. You want to talk football on a budget? I mean that would be the dichotomy, I think, of the postseason when you sit there and you look at the Idaho Potato Bowl versus a possible quarterfinal of Ohio State and Boise State
They should just toss aside the Potato Bowl and make that the Potato Bowl.
No. What you ought to do is make it a doubleheader. You sit there, you make it.
That would make sense. And
make it you make it a doubleheader. On the night before, you have the Idaho Potato Bowl. Then the next day, you clear out everything, you put out all the bunting, and then it's a quarterfinal and it's a home game for Boise State to go up against Ohio State or BYU.
Well, dare I say that Ohio State, Boise State on the Smurf Turf would be no small potatoes.
Well done. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I got a few here and there.
You got a few. Yeah, you got.
Yeah, but the potential matchups here, I find fascinating. Seeing the Crimson Tide or even Notre Dame at Autzen, I'd rather see the Crimson Tide there. Exactly. And then, Indiana at Austin, Texas against the Longhorns. No disrespect to Ole Miss, but that would be a cool thing to see. But again, the Big 12 being shut out. Wow.
It's a Big 12 problem. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I take that back. BYU's in the Big 12 and they're against Ohio State. So disregard what I said about the Big 12.
BYU in the rankings is at 14 and they would be number 12 in the bracket projection.
Yes.
They're last team in.
Last team in. My apologies. There wouldn't be any holy hell in Dallas if they're shut out. So there's that.
Yes.
All right. So to get into the playoff, for some teams have got to win their conference championship. Of course, we have conference championship games. And Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin kind of spoke out about what's probably spoken in private among head coaches, and that is the value of these conference championship games. He's quoted here. I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that they don't want to be in it. The reward to get a bye in the college football playoff versus the risk to get knocked out completely. I mean, that's a really big risk. I think I think it has ended up being a very unique situation of all postseason sports. The way that the system is set up there, how could you go to the SEC championship game and get knocked out of the college football playoff race? And if you don't go to the SEC championship game, you're in. There is a great benefit. There's great benefits to this playoff system and so many people being excited and fans and programs and more games. And then there's the cost too. The conference championships don't mean as much. And it's not just, do you potentially get knocked out by losing that? Do you have more injuries? Are you going to be able to get more injuries? Will you have more injuries, play another game to get a bye, but then other people are having their bye while you're playing in a conference championship game. Basically the gist of the story is you could go to Atlanta and play in the SEC title game. You could go to Indianapolis to play in the Big Ten championship game. And if you lose it, you may not get in, and the team that didn't play in it could get in. So it's almost as like the equivalent of what we're seeing in men's college basketball, where in the major college level, it really doesn't matter if you win the conference tournament or not. You're going to get in. There might be the 18th team in the ACC might have to win it, but again, the dirty little secret there is coaches would prefer not to win their conference championship. They'd get a couple of practice games in. Okay, we'll depart in a quarter and semifinals. It won't affect our seeding.
But this to me is the mentality in the difference between coaches in Division I AA, Division II, Division III, the NAI, and Division I, where you have all of these different divisions that have no issue, problem, or caveat, no problem at all, continuing to play week after week after week after week after week to chase after a championship game until you get to the end and you play in the national semifinal in Division I AA, and then you wait until after the national championship game in Division I single A, FBS versus FCS, and then you get your moment in the sun in Frisco, Texas. So this to me just seems like a mentality difference from coaches that we talk to in all of the other divisions versus the FBS. And the lesson I think here in the FBS is don't win, do well enough if you don't want to play week after week after week after week after week.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do that, you want that gap space, you want to study an opponent, do well enough, and then don't play in your conference championship game. And I think that those rules just changed for Oregon, by the way, because I think they looked at their bylaws and they were like, "Oh, we screwed up." No, Oregon can get in the B1 GCG, but this is I will be intrigued as we go over time. Which coaches prepare their clubs for that sprint to the last game, being prepared to play in a championship game in your conference, then possibly in a first round, and then in a quarterfinal, and then a semi in a national championship. So you could play right now an additional 4 games. Or if you're number 5, maybe you want to aim to be number 5 in the rankings when it comes to what happens. What you want to sit there. Do you want to be number 5? Do you want to be number 4? That's the key here. Do you want that bye week to kind of look at things? Aim for number 4. We're number 4. We get a bye week, I will be intrigued to see which coach has no fear about continuing to be a 5 through 12 seed and continuing to play all the way through, and who shoots to be a number 4 seed so they don't have to play in that 5 through 12 and they get the week off.
I tend to think, and this is a little bit out there, that the conference championship games, if this continues, may eventually erode and go away. Because yes, the money's there. It's a money-making venture for the conferences.
Yeah.
They get to keep all the revenue. But if there's any kind of backlash, and I'm not talking about players and coaches, but sponsorship for these championship games, because the interest in the players and coaches is lukewarm at best, and then you're kind of affecting what's on the field. If both teams are going to get in, does it turn into a touch football game? I mean, that's extreme, but that's kind of how I view it. Is because let's face it, men's basketball, the conference tournaments are great television programming, and those tournaments are better in the mid majors. Yeah, there's some really good games in the major colleges, but um, let's face it, they're going to get 8 bids. Most of those leagues are, but a conference like the Horizon League or the Missouri Valley,
The run of
the
Detroit
champion gets in, and that's where things matter.
and the run of Detroit Mercy, who was like a 12 seed, and they were like 9-21, and they make it all the way to the title game and completely screw things up.
Yeah, and when you look at the current top 12 in the college football playoff, Boise State's the one that kind of fits that mold with comparing it to the mid majors and men's college basketball, because if they win the Mountain West, then they're in.
It's
If they lose, yes, if they lose, then who gets in from the group of 5?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the conference champion and gets in, because they've got to take one.
Yeah.
And so that's where a college football championship game or conference championship game in college football will come into play with the quote group of 5 or mid majors.
See now, and that you might have set up our guest running the anchor leg this week,
Of course,
that you just talked about.
And who is that?
Oh, it's the voice of the Green Wave. It is the voice of the Green Wave, Corey Gloor. He's going to be dropping by to run the anchor leg this week to talk about the season that Tulane has had and what folks are looking at in and around that particular part of New Orleans and Yeoman Stadium, where you can get in for $2. I want my $2. And so we'll talk to Corey in the anchor leg coming up later on in the show to discuss a possibility if math happens.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter @OSG Sports, for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football. Now back to the College Football X. Here's Jon Nelson.
Welcome back to the OSG College Football X, running the anchor leg this week, the voice of the Green Wave, Corey Gloor. Corey, thanks for dropping by and being the anchor leg. I'm handing the baton to you for the final leg of the 4x1 or whatever.
Well, you handed it to one of the slowest people you're ever going to meet, so this is going to go poorly.
Right there with you, brother. I know exactly what we're doing. We wanted to knock on your door this week to give everyone the education as to what is going on with Tulane Green Wave football this year and the chances that maybe if things fall a certain way, you might be in a rather large new postseason extravaganza. What's the vibe been like this season?
Well, it's been, I think folks are over the moon that this has still gone so well, like what we saw the last couple of years here. And when you have maybe your best ever coach leave, like what happened at the end of last year, there is a natural concern about just what will be looming in the immediate future. But what John Summerall has done since taking over has not only sustained the excitement, but even grown it. And what has played out in 2024 is maybe Tulane's best ever team, even factoring in the last couple of years, just how they have gone about this winning streak that they're on, how they have really laid waste to the opponents that they've seen in the American this year. This is not like the team in 2022, which made the Cotton Bowl, had to lean more on their offense than anything. And the last year, it was a lot of close games that they were able to sneak by and win before ultimately losing in the conference championship game. This team is just kind of knocking people around right now, and it's been extremely impressive to watch.
Army and Tulane right now, heading into the weekend as we're talking, both 7-0 in conference right now, 9-2 for Tulane, 4-1 at Yeoman, 5-1 away from home. Has there been one thing that has surprised you pleasantly more than anything this season, either on the field or off, more than anything else?
On the field, the fact that this defense has been as good as it's been is not that surprising, but the way they've gone about it, John, is that there is nobody on this team that has higher than 50 tackles, but they are one of the best defenses in the nation. And so this has been a 3-phase, all hands on deck. You have 20 plus guys in this team with double-digit tackles. And so the way they have gone about stopping teams has been ultra impressive. They just saw the Navy triple option last week and shut them out. And usually your linebacker's going to have 10, 12 tackles in that game. Well, one of them had 5, and that was the team high. And so it was everybody that was doing what they were supposed to do. That's been the thing that has jumped out. They have 5 pick sixes on the year, 6 defensive touchdowns. So it's not just a defense that's stopping teams or a defense that's scoring off of teams. And so that's been the surprise, I think, for this year's group. Off the field, outside of what's going on in probably Bloomington, I don't think you could have had as seamless of a transition from one coach to the next, like what's happened here. And so to have it be this smooth and to even be better in a lot of spots than what we've seen the last 2 years, I think only Indiana can claim maybe that theirs has gone even slightly better than what's happened here at Tulane.
If I'm walking in the door at Yeoman and I haven't seen what's been going on with Tulane, you and I are doing the TV open. We're in the booth, title over wide at Yeoman, getting ready for Thanksgiving night. Title over wide, so-and-so, we mentioned the teams. Hi, it's you. Hi, it's me. Who's in your spot shadow for the games coming up that would be important in the stretch run for Tulane, you think?
Let me tell you about Mekhi Hughes, running back number 1, one of the best runners in the nation. He was top 5 in rush yards heading into last week. He got a couple of touchdowns against Navy. Now a Doak Walker semifinalist. He is setting some records already here for Tulane in his second year. This Tulane team, even though they have some firepower here, John, they hold on to the ball 3rd most in the nation. This is a kill the clock sort of team, and it starts with Mekhi Hughes, the redshirt sophomore out of Birmingham. This is a huge bruiser of a back who doesn't go down on first contact, and he is now in a long lineage of pretty successful running backs here at Tulane, from Tajay Spears to Matt Forte here in recent years. And now Mekhi Hughes has worked into the top 7 of career rushing records. He is now working towards the top 5 of a single season rushing record. And he's about to eclipse himself from what he did last year. It all goes through him offensively. And by and large, that has worked a treat. He scored a touchdown in every game this year in some capacity. And when in doubt, Tulane's just given the ball to him and let him ride, because it's worked out pretty much every time out.
Funny thing is, you mentioned the spreading of the wealth when it comes to tackles, and legitimately when it comes to solo tackles, yeah, you've got folks who are double digits in assists. You got a lot of folks that are clocking numbers, and I mean, no one's more than 36 solo tackles this year. That's almost unheard of.
No, it's something that John Summerall hasn't experienced either, and he's still a relatively new head coach. It's only his 3rd year as a head coach, but he's been around the sport for a long time, and he's a former linebacker himself. The fact that there has been so much production from so many parts of the defensive side of the ball has even surprised him. That the fact that you have 4 linebackers that are rolling in, and they all have come up in big spots here. The defensive line runs about 10, 11 deep, and they will rotate them all in during the course of the game. The secondary is probably the part of the field that you look at, nothing really wows you, but everybody out there, including some youngsters, just goes out there and does their job. I mean, it is not a flashy defense, despite the pick sixes that they have. There's no one true playmaker that teams are trying to avoid. It is all 11 that's been out there in the field, and it's made one of the best defenses in the nation round into 4.
What do you think this team learned about itself in the back-to-back losses with Kansas State and Oklahoma?
That's a great question, because since then they've been just kind of knocking fools around. And so, you know, that the Kansas State game was a majorly disappointing one. They felt they had a touchdown at the end of the game taken away that would have tied the game with an OPI. And then the lead up to Oklahoma, they had to move things around because a hurricane rolled through here. And so the prep week was really thrown off the map, and they fell down 21-0 right away and just couldn't make it up. In both of those games, they knew that they were about 2 plays away from winning. And so I think what they learned is that they were plenty capable of competing at an SEC and Big 12 level if 1 or 2 things goes a little bit more according to plan. And so since then, they have gone out and gone according to plan. And so I think, I think there was disappointment with the losses, obviously, and how each one managed to occur. But what you have seen since is a team that was confident heading into those games about their ability to play with some of the best in the nation. And now they have gone out and proven that they are one of the best in the nation.
And averaging about 9 gazillion points a game, since then in this streak of wins that you've been on. And also, and I know that you'll sit there and everybody will look at the Charlotte game, the Temple game, and the Navy game and sit there and go, well, those first two, the quality of the competition, you took care of business, but you only gave up 9 points. And then you combine that with the goose egg against Navy. You've only given up 9 points in the last 3 weeks, man.
Yeah, and you go through these games, Charlotte, 189 total yards of offense. Temple was 158, and one of them was a 75-yard run. And so half the yardage came on one play. And then Navy, 113 yards of total offense. And that's their lowest that they've had in a game, that non-academy version, since 2002. And so, to hold a triple option to 113, that's no fluke. And so to back up those performances against some of the bottom teams in the league, Charlotte and Temple, but to do that in a sold-out crowd in Indianapolis, it's a record crowd that they had there, and to do that against a very good Navy team and that type of offense, that I hope sounded some alarms to folks who were maybe just seeing Tulane back on the radar with them being back in the playoff poll heading into that game. And there was the dream of the Army-Navy conference championship game that was being discussed. Tulane has ruined that now. But that was a national stage for this team to showcase itself again to many folks. And they did that, to say the least. That was a tail whooping that Tulane put on Navy back in Annapolis. And I think that maybe told a lot of people that this team's legit.
And I think you can spell that WHUPIN apostrophe. That's how bad it was. It was a tail whooping. It was not the double OPING. You can bust out the apostrophe in this one. One other thing that I wanted to discuss with you statistically is red zone efficiency. And 51 of 56 in red zone efficiency, you're coming out of there with some kind of points, except for only 10% of the time this year really taking care of business inside the 20.
Goes back to running the ball and Mekhi Hughes, and it starts with them. That this offensive line is a Joe Moore semifinalist for the best offensive line in FBS. They have kept Darian Mensah, a freshman quarterback, clean by and large this year. Is only 16 sacks on the year, which is not a ton this deep into the season. They're opening up the running lanes for Mekhi Hughes. They've also, the play action has been a huge weapon now for this young quarterback because of how good Hughes has been. That allows him, Darian Mensah, to pull the ball out. He finds Alex Bauman, his tight end, quite a bit in the red zone there. They know how to finish drives because they have all the pieces in place to really confound teams in the red zone. They can run the ball. They have a veteran and high quality offensive line. They got a quarterback who's deadly off of play action. Those three things combined going to make a team that's pretty deadly to stop in the red zone.
12 days between games. You're in a golf shirt, as you and I are talking, for those that are only listening on the audio version, but you're in a golf shirt this weekend, and you got 12 days before senior night in Memphis at Yulman. Do you want to be in a rhythm this time of year? I mean, is there any trepidation about not having anything going on where you have a style and profile in a booth and you're just in a golf shirt this weekend?
So I think there naturally will be. I think what's helpful is that everyone has multiple bye weeks this year. And so they've been through a bye week. They had a slow return off their first bye week against Rice back in October. I think one benefit here is that Memphis is on the same bye week. And so they're going to be dealing with the same thing coming into this game. But I think maybe the more of a concern here for John Summerall is that Tulane has a championship game slot clinched already. And this is early on in the month for that to happen. We know it's Tulane and Army playing for a conference title. And so now he's worried about a natural relaxation heading into this game of, well, we already got our spot clinched. But what he is stressing is it is senior night. And there are many people on this team that will be honored. It is Thanksgiving night, and it's the only show in town for college football that night. And nothing is set in stone in terms of where the conference championship game is going to be played. It's either in New Orleans or West Point. And there's still a chance that you're playing for a playoff spot. You need some help with Boise out west. But you're sitting there at 20 right now in this week's poll, with Boise sitting at 12. They're within reach. And so there's still a ton to play for. That message started getting hammered home on the flight back from Annapolis on Saturday. And they need to keep beating that drum over this week and a half before they hit the field on Thanksgiving night, because you're going to see a team that's also pretty dang good in Memphis that has 2 losses in the league. The only reason why they're not in this discussion right now. And they're going to be coming in looking for win number 10. That's the same number you're looking for. So it's not like you got a tomato can coming in here. You've got a high quality, uber talented team coming into your place on senior night. And even though you got something locked in for December 6th, you don't have much beyond that figured out. So go out there, do the job, and put pressure on the playoff committee, host a championship game, and go from there. That's what's on the line next week.
All right. So now break down Thanksgiving for me in New Orleans. Are you going to Nandina's and getting Italian food and taking it over to Yeoman? What are you doing, man?
I wish. So you've been here before, haven't you? I mean, you break out that gem. So for me personally, this is the time of year in which basketball is also hitting the floor. And so on Thursday morning, am flying back from Cancun, Mexico.
Wow.
Where basketball is playing next week. So I will have nothing to speak of on Thanksgiving. I will go from the airport, maybe get a nap in, and then go to the stadium to call the game. But I know the tailgate spreads are out with Thanksgiving full force fixins and everything. My parents are coming into town. I'm sending them to the tailgates. And then Friday, Black Friday, is when we will get our Thanksgiving festivities on. But it is going to be a travel day for me on Thanksgiving.
Wow, but not necessarily a surprise this time of year. All right, cut the promo for me about where everyone can listen to you and the dulcet tones and the man who's got the pipes breaking everything down as the voice of the Green Wave. Where do they listen? Where do they go?
Yeah, we'd love to have you on Thanksgiving night after you're in a slight turkey coma and they got college football on in front of you. We're the only game on that night. And so the Varsity Network app is a free to download app wherever you are. That is my company's Learfield operation for all the homes of the Learfield schools. That includes Tulane. So give us a download. We'd love to have you join us to end your Thanksgiving holiday in what should be a very, very fun game that night.
Corey Gloor, voice of the Green Wave, man. Please tell me that you're getting miles and points out of the deal. You get your own miles and points. It doesn't go to a collective someplace.
I'm working on that. Yes, I am working on that. it's not going to the NIL collective here.
Just checking. I just wanted to make sure we're looking out for you when you hit the road, especially going that Cancun wheels up from Cancun to New Orleans to get you ready for a doubleheader. Corey, fantastic to see you. Great for breaking everything down for Tulane. Be safe with all the travels, and we'll be keeping an eye on you, man.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. This was fun.